What is the difference between centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges? If you've watched some of my previous videos in this series, you'll know that I've already covered decentralized exchanges, but I didn't tap into decentralized exchanges too much, so let's get into it. Now, there's two main ways to trade in crypto. You have the centralized exchanges, which have some sort of central party. They control the assets, and they provide the platform for all these different trades to happen. So if you're swapping from USDC to Bitcoin or Bitcoin to Ethereum, they're the ones that are providing all of these trades. People deposit into these centralized exchanges, and you hope they keep a balance sheet so that if a lot of people try to withdraw Bitcoin, they can actually afford to do those different withdrawals. Cough, cough, FTX was not able to do this. The other way to trade is decentralized exchanges, which are operated by smart contracts on different decentralized applications, otherwise known as dApps. And this is all to peer-to-peer with no central party. These smart contracts are operating on the blockchain itself and are fully transparent. And then individuals are the ones that are providing the liquidity for these different trading pairs rather than some sort of centralized authority. Now, what are the pros and cons of using a centralized exchange? Well, the pros are that it's very easy to get started. You actually need to have a centralized exchange where you KYC or know your customer, which some would say is a con, in order to actually deposit and withdraw fiat currency such as US dollars, euros, that sort of thing. There's no need to manage different seed phrases, which can be a lot for people to manage. Sometimes they lose their seed phrases on some sort of external wallet, and now they can't access their crypto. There's a lot more customer support if you need help or assistance. Typically, the fees are lower unless you're using something like Coinbase or a US exchange, which are usually higher, but you can get different subscriptions such as Coinbase One to cut that down to no fees. And then on top of that, all the coins on there are a lot more filtered. Most centralized exchanges don't just list any token. If it's listed on Binance or Coinbase, you can trust that that token has a lot more legitimacy as far as a product and team. Some of the cons is that they have full custody of your tokens, meaning that if there is a lack of regulation in the space, which there still is, then they might not have the funds to actually back the balance sheets. So for example, if a bunch of people deposit Bitcoin and then they sell that Bitcoin into their own bullshit FTX token that doesn't actually have any value, well, all of a sudden, if a bunch of people try withdrawing Bitcoin, they might not be able to handle all those withdrawals. And it's basically a bank run that happens in the crypto space. And this is exactly what happened to FTX. They lost over $9 billion worth of their users' assets because a lot of their backing of their actual tokens was their own token that didn't really have much value. And that's part of the problem without having stricter regulations. They were able to do this sort of thing. It wasn't as transparent as it needed to be. And this is why I don't recommend holding your crypto on a centralized exchange. The last con that I want to bring up about CEXs is that they don't actually have every token option. This is a pro and con where you know the tokens on there have a lot more legitimacy, but at the same time, if you want to get into a newer token, most likely you won't be able to access it on a CEX. Now, what are the pros and cons of a DEX? Well, you can buy and sell every single token out there. If there's a token that just came out, you can buy it day one on a decentralized exchange. So if you want to get into a lot of these tokens early, which is a lot of money to be made before they get on CEXs, because a lot of people don't know how to use DEXs, right? You can make a significant amount of money, especially if it gets listed on something like Binance or Coinbase. It's decentralized, so there's no central party controlling everything. And that means that you have full custody where the money is in your wallet, where you don't have to worry about mismanagement of funds of some sort of centralized exchange. The cons is that because there is no central authority, it's up to individuals to add the liquidity themselves. And if there isn't a lot of liquidity in a liquidity pool between a certain pair, you are now going to have price impact. Price impact is how much the price of the token goes up or down when you sell a token. So the more liquidity, the lesser the price impact. So if I'm trying to do a massive buy and there's not a lot of liquidity, then my price impact is going to be high and I'm going to be paying a lot more for that token than the current market price because I effectively pumped up the price of the token. And the same thing goes in reverse. Another thing is that because it's smart contracts, there are hacks and exploits that can happen where liquidity pools can get drained. There's also not a filter on coins, so you could be buying a scam, a rug, or the wrong token, which oftentimes happens. They try doing the same name. And in this situation, always post the contract address of the correct token, which is kind of like its identifier. There's no support if something goes wrong most of the time, so you're shit out of luck. And it's a little more complicated to start, but once you get used to it, it's actually very easy to use these different DEXs on all these different chains. Now, I just mentioned liquidity, but how do liquidity pools actually work? Well, if you think about it, guys, a centralized exchange has people deposit or withdraw their assets. I deposit US dollars and I buy Bitcoin, or I deposit Bitcoin. And now you're trusting that they have a balance sheet of all those assets that were deposited and that they're not just blowing it on strippers or something like that. Because now all of a sudden, if a lot of people tried withdrawing, guess what? They don't have the money. DEXs are a little bit different. Instead of us trusting some sort of balance sheet, we have different individuals that are willing to provide liquidity in exchange for rewards. And if you watched my basic swaps video with centralized exchanges, you'll know that every single token has a pair. Let's say Ethereum and USDC or Bitcoin and USDC. And what will happen is on a decentralized exchange, you can provide liquidity for these different token pairs. Uniswap is the biggest decentralized exchange, and it's the most trusted, and it has the most amount of liquidity. And because of this, this is where a lot of people do their different swaps. And the way the liquidity works is someone can come along and they can combine two tokens into one token or a liquidity pair token. And oftentimes it's 50-50, but you can have situations where it's 80% Ethereum and 20% USDC, or 20% USDC and 80% Ethereum. There's all these different combinations, but for the most part, guys, it's 50-50. In this situation, let's say it's USDC and Jelly. So what would happen is, let's say I had $1,000 US, I had $500 worth of USDC, and I had $500 worth of the Jelly token. I can now combine them together because it's 50-50 in terms of USD dollar value. I combine that into one liquidity pair token, and now it's almost like they got merged together, right? And now what happens is I can provide that liquidity pair token on this decentralized exchange. And the reason that I would provide liquidity is because I'm able to get two benefits. The first thing is every single time someone trades on that liquidity pool, there is a liquidity pool fee. Oftentimes the standard is 0.3%, but it can be customized. Sometimes it's up towards 1% or even 2%. And what happens is every time someone trades on that liquidity pool, there is a liquidity pool fee, and that gets distributed between everyone that's providing liquidity. And then a percentage also typically goes to the decentralized exchange. You also then have a lot of decentralized exchanges that have their own token. And the reason they have their own token is they say, hey, if you provide liquidity on our DEX, not only will you get these trading fees, but you'll also get a certain amount of our token, such as sushi token or whatever token is out there. They'll usually have some Ponzi type token that they give you as an incentive. Now, what's interesting on Uniswap is they have so much volume and so much trust with their smart contracts that they don't actually have their own token that they give as a yield. But because there's so much volume, the APR on simply the trading fees is high enough where they don't have to have some sort of Ponzi token incentivize it. Otherwise, a lot of these different decentralized exchanges out there, you can earn both the fee as well as their token. And just be aware, a lot of these tokens end up dying in the long run because you have so many new tokens coming in, but you don't actually have enough demand or utility to keep up with all the selling pressure. Now, one of the things that's interesting is the more liquidity that is added to these different liquidity pools, the lesser the price impact. And I had just mentioned it, the more liquidity being added, the lesser the impact of the price when you try to sell or buy a position. Just be aware that there is a thing called impermanent loss if you're providing liquidity, and I'll have that in a future video. Now, in order to actually get started on a decentralized exchange, you first have to understand that decentralized exchanges are dApps that are created by teams that are using these different smart contracts, and these dApps are built on different blockchains. So most blockchains have a top DEX, and it's pretty easy to look up which one is the top. If you're on Binance Smart Chain, for example, PancakeSwap is the number one. If you're on EVM or Ethereum-based chains, Uniswap is number one. If you're on Polygon Matic, SushiSwap is number one, I believe, unless that's changed. So it's one of those situations where you have to realize that these are operating on different blockchains. Now, to complicate things even further, not only do you have different blockchains, and not only do you have to fund them from some sort of centralized exchange, but different blockchains not only have different DEXs, but they also have different wallets or Chrome extensions that you need. Rabi wallet is the main wallet that you're going to be able to use on a lot of chains. They have Binance Smart Chain, they have all the Ethereum-based chains, and a lot of times you're going to be able to use Ravi. There's also Phantom Wallet that has Solana as well as Bitcoin, and they're constantly adding different blockchains. They have Monad coming up. You then have Kepler Wallet, which is in the Cosmos ecosystem. So think of things like Atom or Celestia or Injective. You then have Bitcoin Chrome extension wallets such as Xverse or Unisat. And then you even have Cardano-based wallets such as Vesper or Nami. So you have to realize that when you're getting started in these different blockchains, I would watch a video, and I'll have some videos in this learning program of how to actually get started in that blockchain, because you need to know which wallet, you need to know how to fund it, you need to know which decentralized exchanges to use, you need to know what different decentralized applications to use, you need to know what projects are out there, and it's an absolute pain in the ass. And if you've ever heard of interoperability, it's them hoping that over time, all these blockchains can be super seamless and interoperable. But in the meantime, if you're early watching this video, it's still a pain in the ass, and that's just part of the process. Another thing that you have to be aware of is each blockchain has their own gas token. So if I want to transact on Binance Smart Chain, guess what I need? I need BNB. That BNB token is how I pay for the different gas fees and transactions that happen on that chain. If I want to transact on Ethereum, I'm going to need some Ethereum in order to cover the gas and transactions on that chain. If I want to interact with Cardano, I'm going to need Cardano. I'm going to need ADA. So just be aware that you're also going to need that home token in a sense if you're interacting with that blockchain. The last thing that I want to say about getting started on a DEX, and I brought this up on my CEX video, you need to make sure that you're sending your tokens to the right chain or you will lose the money. Most tokens, guys, are accessible on multiple chains. So for example, something like USDC can be on Ethereum. It can be on Binance. It can be on AVAX. It can be on Solana. So you got to make sure that when you're sending, withdrawing, depositing, whatever the case is, that you are selecting the same chain. If I have USDC on Coinbase and I hit withdrawal, I'll be able to select which chain I want. If I want that on Ethereum, I've got to make sure that I copy the right address and send it to the right wallet. And now all of a sudden that USDC is going to be on Ethereum. And you can always do a thing called bridge, where you can take that USDC on Ethereum and say, hey, I want that on Binance. And now you can pay a small fee and it'll transfer from your Ethereum wallet over to your Binance wallet. And now that Ethereum's over on Binance Smart Chain. I'm going to make more videos going over these additional things, so don't worry if you don't understand it yet.